Hello and welcome to Frost Over the World, even more international than ever this week. Later in the programme, the President of Kosovo, then Thailand on the brink again, best-selling author Ajai Sahni from Norway, and the prospects for a breakthrough, possible or not, in Palestine. But first, India. From late on Wednesday evening, the Indian city of Mumbai was shaken by series of terrorist attacks. Gunmen with automatic weapons and grenades opened fire at major tourist sites. A hostage situation later developed in two of the city's luxury hotels. And I'm joined now by someone very qualified to talk about this subject from the Indian point of view, Dr. Ajai Sahni, Executive Director of the Institute for Conflict Management in Delhi. I talked to him to try and find out more. Who do you think is behind these attacks, these horrendous attacks?
Well, the preliminary information that we are getting, the limited evidence that is available, points very clearly once again to Pakistan. So we are certainly talking about Pakistan-based groups. There has been a confirmation of at least one Pakistani national who is involved. So we are looking very clearly in the Pakistani direction. There may, of course, be some facilitators or even participants from India, but once again, that would take us back to training, facilitation, and the mobilization into this group by Pakistani groups or handlers.
When you say Pakistani, there is a situation in the world today where people can be hiding or in Pakistan or in Britain or wherever it is, but they're not actually acting for Pakistan or Britain or whoever it is. They are, in fact, rebels all round. I mean, when you say Pakistani sources, do you mean sources that involve the Pakistan government?
At this juncture, it is not possible to make a clear determination, but there is a vast difference between, say, those who are acting in England or in India and those who are acting in Pakistan. Pakistan has had a very long history of direct sponsor. The Pakistani state has a very long history of direct sponsorship of terrorism, particularly terrorism directed against India. And very many of the groups, including the principal group that is under suspicion right now, the Lashkar-e-Taiba, are creations of the Pakistani state, and the Lashkar-e-Taiba is regarded as a loyal group, still being supported and aided by and given scope to function within Pakistan by the establishment. If it is the Lashkar-e-Taiba, I am fairly confident in stating, and this is not certain as yet that it is the Lashkar-e-Taiba, but if it is the Lashkar-e-Taiba, then the Pakistani state cannot escape responsibility for its actions.
And in that situation, I mean, the rapprochement between India and Pakistan that people were hopeful about will not happen or will survive?
One, I do not think that there is any good faith effort at any such rapprochement. You cannot have a good faith effort of rapprochement between the principal sponsor of terrorism and its principal victim. That's one. Number two, I don't think, as far as the so-called peace process is concerned, this incident will have any greater impact than any of the earlier incidents have had. There seems to be a certain quality of resignation in the Indian establishment, and acceptance that whatever happens, we still have to keep talking to whoever is in charge in Pakistan because we really don't have any options. I don't agree with that, but that regrettably is the prevailing sort of mindset in the establishment here.
Because President Zardari in Pakistan is on the record as very much wanting to see a rapprochement with India, a closeness with India, isn't he?
Well, if you examine the record, you will find every leader of Pakistan having made similar statements and having actively supported terrorism at the same time. I do not take anything any leader in Pakistan may say very seriously. Unless we see changes on the ground, there is no reason to believe that these statements are being made honestly and with an intention to implement them on the ground.
And do you expect further attacks or not?
Oh, absolutely. I know that there will be further attacks.
You know?
Absolutely. There is no, unless India generates the capacities to neutralize the source of this terrorism and the networks of this terrorism across this country and on soil abroad, these attacks will continue. Unless we have the capacities to contain or prevent these at the point of attack, we will continue to suffer large fatalities as we have in this case.
Dr. Sahni there, and now we're delighted to be joined by Mohsin Hamid, author of the great novel, The Reluctant Fundamentalist, and he's been watching what we've just heard, and it was very sort of trenchant. I mean, people have been saying maybe external influences and so on, and he just went all the way there, didn't he?
He did. I mean, I think at the moment there's two possible responses. Either we can use this attack as a way of continuing to think that India and Pakistan must be opposed to one another, and I think his point of view is in that group. Or we can start to say there's a shared sense of sorrow that actually unites both countries. Islamabad has had a hotel destroyed, pitched gun battles were fought at the Red Mosque last year, and actually the two countries are much more similar and hopefully can act in unison in a way that they previously never could.
That would be a breakthrough, because I mean, when one talks to him about thawing of relations and so on, he's not very sympathetic with that. But a lot of people in both countries are.
I think they are. I mean, and I think we could be at a real changing point, because in Pakistan, the perception that terrorism is directed at Pakistanis has become commonplace. And the country is really realigning in its view on terrorism. The army is fighting pitched battles in the tribal areas right now. Hundreds of thousands of Pakistanis have been displaced in this fighting. This is not the same as a few years ago, when perhaps militants in Kashmir were partly operating out of Pakistan and Pakistan was suffering no consequences. So there is a big change. In India, however, I think the urge to look abroad also fits in with the desire not to look within. In other words, there's a great deal of resentment among Muslims in India, for example. I was in Bombay a year ago. I love the city. It's a beautiful, wonderful place. But I was in a cab in Bombay, and my taxi driver asked me if I was Pakistani and if I was Muslim. I said yes. And he went on a long rant about how terrible the state of Muslims in Bombay is. So these problems exist, and always looking to Pakistan is also a way of hiding from them.
Right, because they're a bit over 10% of the population.
A bit over 10%, and increasingly becoming a kind of marginalized underclass. The treatment of religious minorities in Pakistan is no better. I'm not saying Pakistan should be anyone's exemplar in this area. But actually both countries have enormous problems with their religious and ethnic minorities, and with a state that has chosen violence as opposed to negotiation and integration.
And what about Kashmir? What role does that play in the coming together of the two nations, or not?
Well, this is what's very interesting. In the last couple of years, even under Musharraf, but certainly also now under President Zardari, Pakistan has been putting forward compromise positions on Kashmir that are quite close to what has been the historical, perceived historical Indian position, and getting very little traction on the Indian side. And it makes one wonder, is it that the Indian negotiators don't trust the Pakistanis, or simply that perpetuating this conflict is in the interests of the Indian political setup? And I think that's what's unfortunate. Because the Congress party requires sort of frightened Muslims as a significant vote bank, and the opposition BJP has an anti-Muslim sort of position, resolution of this Muslim-Hindu India-Pakistan tension isn't easy under the Indian political system. But that said, I think the vast majority of people in both sides would like to see it resolved, as these terrorists target Pakistanis and Indians. We have a shared interest in seeing it resolved, and hopefully it will be resolved.
That would be the natural basis, as you were saying, for an alliance and so on. Would you think the impact of this will have an effect on the upcoming Indian elections and things like that, or do you think it will fade from the memory quite quickly?
It might have an impact. I don't know enough about Indian domestic politics to say anything about what it will do to the elections. But what I think is interesting about terrorism generally is it seeks to provoke a response. Simply killing hundreds of our fellow human beings is not the objective. The objective is to then have us react. So if Pakistani army is now deployed on the Afghan border fighting terrorists, if India mobilizes its army and forces the Pakistani army to respond, that is precisely what the terrorists want. And I think one should think through, not reacting immediately in this way as the best way of blunting the terrorist objectives.
Mohsin, that's very, very clear. Thank you very much for being with us. Until quite recently, Thailand was seen as a haven of peace and democracy among the sea of troubles of Indochina, surrounded by Cambodia, Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam and Malaysia. The Thai democratic monarchy set an example, it seemed, of stability to its neighbours. That stability is not there anymore, at least at the moment. An army coup in 2006 overthrew the elected government of Thaksin Shinawatra, only for a Thaksin-backed government to be re-elected last year. This week, anti-government protesters took over Bangkok's two main airports, just as the tourist season was gearing up for its high point. Both police and the army have been equivocal in their response, and the country remains in uncertainty and chaos. And I'm delighted to be joined now from Bangkok by senior financier Robert MULLIS. Robert, what sort of day has it been today? Any developments today? It's your end of your day just now on Friday.
The position is, as you have probably heard, last night a state of emergency was issued around the, just centralised at the airports. And I suppose a lot of people had expectations that there would be quite a rapid response. I understand there was a briefing of foreign diplomats last night, and the expectation was that this was going to be resolved very quickly. What appears to have happened today is the level of the mobs at the respective airports has reduced slightly, so I'm told, and that quiet discussions are going on. And effectively, the Thai principle of life generally is a peaceful one. And I think the aim here is to resolve this peacefully and as quickly as possible. What occurred in the last couple of days was not peaceful demonstration. It was, to some extent, people, one could say thugs with guns, and clearly not representing anybody in this country.
What about the future then, Robert? In this sense, who can lead Thailand now? Is it the army or is it only the king? Who is going to be leading Thailand in 3 months' time?
I believe a democratically elected government will continue to lead Thailand. Thailand has always found a solution, and this is a country of compromise in so many ways. And they are seeking to pretend that they are representing the country and the monarchy and the business community. And clearly they are not. And their support levels in the last 24 hours clearly have fallen a lot. And it is a great shame. They had some viable opposition points, and they were acting peacefully. They clearly have overstepped.
Thank you very much for that, Robert, and for that summing up. A note of optimism there in that report. Many thanks, Robert.
Thank you very much, Sir David.
And we'll be right back.